I haven't been back to the Adirondacks since 2007. Haven't even driven through that part of New York. My wife thinks it's because I don't like the cold anymore, and I let her believe that. It's easier than trying to explain what happened that October. Easier than watching her face change when she realises I'm not joking. My name's Alex. Back then, I was 26, working construction in Albany, and hunting was pretty much the only thing I looked forward to all year. I'd grown up doing it with my dad before he passed, and it was one of those traditions I held on to maybe a little too tight. That fall, I'd planned a week-long trip with two guys I'd known since high school, Marcus and Joel. Marcus was the loud one, always cracking jokes, couldn't take anything seriously even when he should. Joel was quieter, more thoughtful, the kind of guy who'd spend 20 minutes lining up a shop because he wanted it clean and humane. We'd been planning this trip since June. The deer population was good that year, and we'd gotten permits for a section of the Adirondack wilderness that didn't see a lot of traffic. The area was about 40 miles northwest of Tupper Lake, accessible only by logging roads that hadn't been maintained in years. We liked it that way. The harder a place was to reach, the fewer people you'd find, and the better the hunting. We drove up on a Thursday morning, Marcus's truck loaded down with our gear. The drive took about 4 hours, and for most of it, we were in good spirits. Marcus kept playing this god-awful country music, and Joel kept threatening to throw his phone out the window. I was in the back seat, half listening to them bicker, watching the landscape change from highways to small towns, to nothing but dense forest on both sides of the road. The logging road we turned onto was rough, I mean really rough. We had to stop twice to move fallen branches, and there were sections where the truck dipped so far into ruts that I thought we might bottom out. Marcus was loving it, whooping every time we bounced over something, while Joel gripped the door handle and muttered about transmission damage. We reached our planned camping spot around 2 in the afternoon. It was a small clearing near a creek, maybe 30 yards across, surrounded by thick pines and maples that were dropping their leaves in these carpets of red and gold. The air was cold enough that you could see your breath, and there was that smell, wet earth and pine needles, and something clean about it that you only get that deep in the woods. We spent the next couple hours setting up camp. 2 tents, a fire pit, food hung in a tree away from camp because of bears. Standard stuff. Marcus kept making jokes about Joel's tent being too small, saying he'd packed it for a weekend with his girlfriend and forgot we were actual-sized humans. Joel told him where he could shove his opinions. I remember that first night being perfect, honestly. We cooked hot dogs over the fire, drank a few beers, talked about nothing important. Marcus told a story about a foreman at work who'd accidentally ordered 10 pallets of the wrong tiles, and we laughed until our sides hurt. The stars were incredible out there, thousands of them, the Milky Way, like a smear of paint across the sky. I felt that contentment you get sometimes, that sense that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. We turned in around 11. The plan was to wake up before dawn and head out to scout for deer sign. I don't know what time it was when Marcus woke me up. Still dark, but there was that quality to the darkness that meant morning wasn't too far off. He was shaking my shoulder, and when I opened my eyes, I could see his face in the dim glow of his flashlight. He looked confused more than scared. "Alex, you need to see this," he said quietly. I climbed out of my sleeping bag, pulled on my boots, and followed him outside. Joel was already up, standing at the edge of the clearing, with his flashlight pointed into the trees. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating trunks and undergrowth, and... "What the hell is that?" Marcus said. About 50 yards into the woods, there was a structure. At first, I thought maybe it was a hunting blind someone had built and abandoned, but as we got closer I realised it was way too big for that. It was a cabin, a small one, maybe 12 feet on each side, made from logs that looked old and weathered. The strange thing, the thing that made all 3 of us stop walking, was that it didn't have any windows, and I couldn't see a door. We stood there for a minute, our flashlight beams playing over the walls. The logs were dark with age, fitted together tightly. The roof was peaked, covered in what looked like tar paper that had rotted in places, but there were no openings, not one. "That wasn't here yesterday," Joel said. His voice was flat, like he was trying to convince himself. "It was here," I said. "We just didn't notice it. We got here in daylight, set up camp, didn't explore much. I walked out this way to take a leak before bed," Marcus said. "I swear to God, I didn't see any cabin." We moved closer. The structure was solid, not some optical illusion or trick of the shadows. I reached out and touched one of the logs. It was cold and rough, and when I pressed against it, It didn't give at all. Real. Definitely real. Maybe it's a storage shed, Joel offered, for park rangers or something. They board up the openings when it's not in use. That made sense, sort of. Except we were way outside any official park boundaries, on land that was technically owned by a timber company that hadn't logged it in decades. And why would anyone build a storage shed with no doors? We walked around the entire perimeter, 4 walls, all identical, no breaks in the logs except for the natural gaps where they fit together. The roof was intact, except for those rotted patches, and there was no chimney, no vent, nothing. "This is weird as hell," Marcus said. He knocked on one of the walls with his knuckles, and the sound was dull and flat. "But it's just an old shed or something. Maybe there's a door on the roof, like you access it from above." "Why would anyone do that?" Joel asked. Marcus shrugged. "I don't know, man. People do weird stuff in the woods. Maybe it's a cache for emergency supplies, maybe it's art, maybe it's aliens." We stood there a bit longer, and then Joel said what we were all thinking. "We should probably head back to camp. Sun will be up soon, and we want to get out early." We did. We walked back to the clearing, and I kept glancing over my shoulder at the cabin. It sat there in the woods, dark and silent and wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. Marcus was right. People built strange things in remote places. It was probably nothing. We made coffee as the sky started to lighten, ate some granola bars, and geared up for the day. By 6:30, we were heading out in different directions to scout. The plan was to cover more ground separately and meet back at camp by early afternoon. I spent the morning walking deer trails and looking for sign. I found tracks, some droppings, a few rubs on saplings where bucks had scraped their antlers. Normal stuff. The forest was quiet except for the occasional bird call and the sound of wind moving through the branches. I felt good. Felt like we'd made the right choice coming out here. Around noon, I started making my way back toward camp. I was maybe a mile out when I heard Marcus calling my name. His voice had an edge to it, something urgent, and I picked up my pace. When I got to the clearing, Marcus and Joel were both there, standing near the fire pit. Joel looked pale. "What's wrong?" I asked. Joel pointed toward the woods, the cabin. We went back to look at it in daylight. "And?" Marcus swallowed. "There's still no door, man. But we heard something inside." I stared at them. "What do you mean, you heard something?" "We walked up to it," Joel said slowly. "Wanted to get a better look, see if maybe there was an entrance we missed last night. We were standing there, trying to figure out how the thing was even built, and we heard movement. Inside. Like someone walking around. It was footsteps," Marcus added. "And then we heard voices. Muffled. Like people talking in low tones. We couldn't make out words, but it was definitely voices. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. Could have been animals. Animals don't walk with footsteps like that," Joel said. "And they definitely don't talk." "Did you knock?" I asked. "Call out?" They both shook their heads. "We got the hell out of there," Marcus said. "If someone's in there, they've been sealed inside. Either that or there's an entrance we're not seeing, which means they saw us and didn't say anything. Either way, it's not right." We decided to go back together, all 3 of us. I don't know why exactly. Maybe we thought there was safety in numbers, or maybe we just needed to understand what we were dealing with. We grabbed our flashlights, even though it was daytime. The forest was dense enough that shadows pulled thick between the trees. The cabin looked the same as it had in the dark. 4 walls, no openings, the roof sagging slightly in the middle. We approached slowly, and I noticed that the ground around it was undisturbed. No footprints, no tire tracks, no sign that anyone had been there recently. The leaves and pine needles lay in an even layer, undisturbed except where we'd walked earlier. We stopped about 10 feet away. The air felt colder near the structure, and I noticed that the birds had gone quiet. That's something I've learned to pay attention to over the years. When the forest goes silent, it usually means something's wrong. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded small in the stillness. "Is someone in there?" "Nothing." Joel tried. "We're not trying to bother you. We're just camping nearby. If you need help or..." That's when we heard it. A scraping sound from inside, like something being dragged across a wooden floor. It moved from one side of the cabin to the other, slow and deliberate. Then it stopped. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. "Maybe it's an animal," I said, but I didn't believe it. The sound had been too purposeful, too measured. Joel walked closer to the cabin, and I wanted to tell him to stop, but I didn't. He pressed his ear against one of the logs and closed his eyes, listening. We all held our breath. After a moment, he stepped back. His face had gone even paler. There's someone in there. I can hear breathing. And I can hear... He stopped. What? Marcus asked. Whispering. Someone's whispering in there. That's when I decided we needed to leave. Not just walk back to camp, but pack up and get out of those woods entirely. There was something deeply wrong about the cabin. About the fact that it had no entrance. About the sounds coming from inside. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to put distance between us and that structure. But Marcus, being Marcus, had a different idea. We should call the ranger station, or the police. If someone's trapped in there, we can't just leave. Our phones don't have service out here, Joel reminded him. Then we drive until we get service and make the call. I agreed to that. It was a compromise. We'd leave, but we'd report it to someone who could actually do something. We started back toward the camp, walking faster than we had on the way out. That's when Joel stopped. Guys, we turned. He was looking down at a tree that had fallen across the path, something we'd climbed over on our way to the cabin. Carved into the bark, crude but unmistakable, were 3 names. Marcus, Joel, Alex. Our names. Fresh cuts. The wood still pale and raw where the bark had been stripped away. What the... Marcus started, but he didn't finish. We all just stood there, staring at those names carved in the exact order we'd introduced ourselves to each other that morning. Not alphabetical, not random. The exact order. We need to go, I said, right now. We ran back to camp. I don't know if we were being logical about it, but fear had kicked in, real fear. The kind that makes your hands shake and your thoughts scatter. We threw our gear into bags, barely bothering to organise anything. Joel was stuffing his sleeping bag into its sack without rolling it. Marcus was swearing under his breath, a steady stream of obscenities as he kicked dirt over the fire pit. I was taking down my tent when I noticed something on the ground near where the entrance had been. A piece of paper held down by a rock. I picked it up. It was a page torn from a notebook, the edges ragged. Written on it in pencil were 3 words, "Stay another night." The handwriting was shaky, almost childlike. I showed it to the others. Joel's hands were trembling as he read it. "Who left this?" he asked. "I don't know," I said, "but we're leaving now." We finished packing in record time and loaded everything into Marcus's truck. The sun was still up, probably around 3 in the afternoon, and I remember feeling this desperate need to get out of there before dark. We climbed into the truck, Marcus turned the key, and nothing. The engine didn't even turn over. Just a clicking sound, rapid and mechanical. "You've got to be kidding me," Marcus said. He tried again, same result. Joel leaned forward from the back seat. "When's the last time you had the battery checked?" "It's fine," Marcus said. "It was fine this morning." He popped the hood and we all got out to look. I don't know much about engines, but even I could see that something was wrong. The battery cables had been disconnected. Not broken or corroded. Disconnected. Someone had opened the hood and removed them while we were at the cabin. The 3 of us stood there, staring at the engine like it might suddenly make sense. The forest around us was still quiet. Too quiet. "Someone doesn't want us to leave," Joel said softly. Marcus reconnected the cables with shaking hands. It took him a couple tries because his fingers weren't cooperating. When he finally got them secured, we climbed back into the truck. This time, the engine started. The sound of it roaring to life was the best thing I'd heard all day. We started down the logging road, driving faster than we probably should have given the condition of the path. I kept looking out the back window, expecting to see someone following us, but there was nothing. Just trees and shadows and the dirt road disappearing behind us. We'd gone maybe 2 miles when we came around a bend and had to slam on the brakes. A tree had fallen across the road, a big pine, easily 3 feet in diameter. It was fresh. I could see the pale wood where it had snapped, could smell the sap. "That wasn't there when we drove in," Marcus said. We got out to assess the situation. The tree was too big to move, too big to go around. The forest was too dense on either side. We could try backing up and finding another route, but the logging roads were a maze and we hadn't exactly memorised the way out. "We cut through it," Joel said. He'd brought a chainsaw for clearing tent space if we needed it. Small, battery-powered, but it would do the job. It took us almost an hour to cut a section out of the trunk and drag the pieces to the side. By the time we were done, the sun was getting low, painting the sky in shades of orange and red through the trees. We were covered in sawdust and sweat despite the cold. We climbed back into the truck and kept going. I think we all felt a little relief, like maybe we'd cleared the obstacle and everything would be okay now. We just had to get back to the main road, get somewhere with cell service. and we could call this whole thing a disturbing but ultimately harmless experience. Then the sun set. Darkness came fast in the forest, and the truck's headlights did little to push it back. The logging road seemed to narrow, the trees pressing in closer on either side. Marcus was driving faster than he should, but none of us told him to slow down. We just wanted out. I don't know how long we drove. It felt like longer than it should have taken to reach the main road. The GPS on Marcus's phone was useless without service, just a blue dot on a grey screen surrounded by nothing. "I think we took a wrong turn," Joel said from the back seat. "We've been going straight," Marcus said. "There haven't been any turns." But Joel was right. Something felt off. The road looked different, the trees unfamiliar, and then the headlights illuminated something ahead that made Marcus hit the brakes hard enough that we all lurched forward. The clearing, our campsite, the fire pit we'd buried, the flattened grass where the tents had been. "That's impossible," Marcus said. "We drove away from here. We've been driving for 40 minutes, I said, looking at my watch. "We've been driving for 40 minutes straight." We sat there with the engine idling. None of us wanted to say what we were thinking, that somehow we'd circled back, that the road had led us here despite us never turning around. "Let's try again," Joel said. "Different direction." We did. We turned the truck around and headed back the way we'd come. This time we drove slower, paying attention to landmarks. I watched the trees, tried to memorize specific patterns. We passed the section where we cut through the fallen pine. Then we kept going, following the road as it wound through the forest. 30 minutes later, we were back at the clearing. Marcus punched the steering wheel. "What the hell is happening?" We tried a third time. This time we kept track of every turn, every fork in the road. We chose deliberately, marking which way we were going, but the result was the same. 45 minutes of driving, and we ended up right back where we'd started. Oh, by now, it was fully dark. The kind of dark you only get in the wilderness, where the night presses in so thick it feels physical. The truck's headlights carved out a small sphere of visibility, and beyond that was nothing but blackness and trees. "We're stuck here," Joel said. His voice was hollow. "We'll wait until morning," I said. "It will be easier to navigate in daylight. We'd probably keep missing a turn in the dark." It was a lie, and we all knew it, but it was the only plan we had. We couldn't keep driving in circles, burning gas and fraying our nerves, so we made a decision that I still regret. We decided to stay the night in the truck, doors locked, engine running for heat. We took turns keeping watch. I took the first shift, sitting in the front passenger seat while Marcus and Joel tried to sleep in the back. My rifle was across my lap. I kept telling myself that if anyone approached the truck, I'd see them in the headlights. I'd have warning. The forest was absolutely silent. No wind, no animal sounds, nothing. Just the low rumble of the truck's engine and the occasional creak of the suspension when one of us shifted position. Around midnight, I saw light through the trees. Just a flicker at first, orange and warm like a campfire. Then it grew brighter. I shook Marcus awake. "There's a fire," I whispered. "In the woods." We watched it together. The light was coming from the direction of the cabin. It flickered and danced like flames. But it didn't spread, didn't consume the trees around it, just stayed in one spot, steady and bright. "Who's out there?" Marcus asked. "I don't know." We watched the light for over an hour. It never moved, never changed. And then, just before 1 a.m, we heard the voices. They were distant but clear, carried through the still air. Multiple voices, men and women, talking in a low, rhythmic cadence. It sounded almost like a conversation. But the rhythm was off, too measured, like they were reciting something. "Are those people?" Joel asked from the back seat. He was awake now, pressed forward between the front seats. "I think so," I said. The voices continued for maybe 10 minutes, then they stopped and the light went out. The forest plunged back into total darkness. We sat there in the truck, staring out at nothing, our hearts hammering. "We're leaving," Marcus said, "right now. I don't care if we drive in circles all night." He put the truck in gear and started driving. We went fast, almost recklessly, the suspension groaning as we bounced over ruts and rocks. We didn't talk. We just focused on the road ahead, willing it to take us somewhere different. And then we saw it. The cabin, right beside the road, no more than 20 feet from where the truck was passing. It was impossible. The cabin had been 50 yards into the woods, away from any path. But there it was, unmistakable in the headlights. And this time, there was a door. It was open. The doorway was black, a rectangle of darkness that seemed to absorb the headlights rather than reflect them. We could see the edges of the frame, rough-cut logs, but nothing beyond. Just that impenetrable darkness. "Don't stop," Joel said. "Do not stop." Marcus didn't. He kept driving, eyes locked on the road ahead, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The cabin slid past, and I forced myself not to look back, but I could feel it behind us. That open doorway, like a void pulling at my spine. We drove for another hour. This time we didn't end up at the clearing. Instead, we came to a place where the road forked, neither direction familiar. Marcus chose the left fork at random, and we kept going. At some point, I think around 3 in the morning, Joel spoke up from the back seat. "Guys, when was the last time you saw Marcus?" I turned to look at Joel, then I looked at the driver's seat. Marcus was still there, hands on the wheel, eyes on the road. "He's right here," I said. "What are you talking about?" "I'm serious," Joel said. His voice was tight with panic. "Look at him. Really look." I did. Marcus was driving, his face visible in the green glow of the dashboard and lights, but something was wrong. His expression was blank, neutral, his eyes unfocused, and he wasn't blinking. He just stared straight ahead, hands locked on the wheel, driving mechanically. "Marcus," I said. He didn't respond, didn't even twitch. I reached over and touched his shoulder. His body was cold through his jacket, cold like he'd been standing outside in winter for hours. I snatched my hand back. "Marcus!" Joel shouted. Nothing. The truck just kept moving forward, following the road. Marcus's hands steady on the wheel. I made a decision that probably wasn't smart, but I was beyond rational thinking. I grabbed the wheel and yanked it to the side. The truck swerved, and for a moment I thought Marcus would react, would fight me for control, but he didn't. His hands just slid off the wheel as the truck careened towards the trees. I grabbed the shifter and threw it into the park, and the truck jerked to a stop with a violent lurch. The engine was still running, the headlights still pointed into the forest, and Marcus was still sitting there, staring straight ahead with empty eyes. "We need to get him out," Joel said. We opened the doors and went around to the driver's side. When I pulled Marcus's door open, he slumped sideways, his seatbelt the only thing keeping him from falling out. His skin was ice cold to the touch, his lips slightly blue, but he was breathing, shallow, slow breaths that fogged in the cold air. "He's in some kind of shock," I said. "We need to warm him up." We pulled him out of the truck and laid him in the back seat, piling our jackets over him. Joel climbed in beside him, rubbing Marcus's hands, talking to him in a low, steady voice. I got behind the wheel. The seat was still cold from Marcus's body heat, or lack of it. I started driving again. This time I kept my eyes fixed on the road, refusing to look too closely at the trees around us. We couldn't afford to have anyone else zone out or lose themselves, or whatever had happened to Marcus. We just needed to keep moving. Dawn started to break around 5:30. The sky turned from black to deep blue to grey, and slowly the forest became visible again. The trees looked normal in the growing light, just pines and maples and undergrowth, like any forest in upstate New York. But I didn't trust it. Daylight didn't mean safety, not after everything that had happened. Around 6, Marcus started to come around. He made a small groaning sound, and when I glanced back, I saw him blinking, his eyes focusing. Joel was still beside him, and I saw the relief on his face. "Marcus," Joel said, "you with us?" Marcus looked confused. "What happened? Why am I back here?" "You don't remember?" I asked. "I remember driving. And then... nothing. Blank. How long was I out?" "Couple hours," I said. "You went into some kind of trance. Just kept driving like you were on autopilot." Marcus sat up slowly, shaking his head like he was trying to clear it. I don't remember any of that." We drove for another 20 minutes, and finally, we saw something that made my chest loosen with relief. A sign, faded and weathered, but unmistakable. Tupper Lake, 15 miles. We were back on a real road. The logging path had connected with a state route at some point, though I had no idea when. But we were out. We'd made it. None of us spoke much during that final stretch. We just watched the landscape, saw the first signs of civilization. A gas station, a small house, a road sign. Normal things, safe things. We stopped at a diner just outside Tupper Lake. It was one of those classic roadside places with vinyl booths and a waitress who'd been working there probably longer than we'd been alive. We ordered coffee and breakfast, and for a while we just sat there processing. "We should report this," Joel said eventually. Tell someone about the cabin." "And say what?" Marcus asked. "That we found a cabin with no doors that somehow followed us? That I lost 3 hours and can't remember anything? They'll think we're on drugs." He was right. How could we explain what had happened in a way that made sense? But Joel insisted, so after we ate, we found the local police station and asked to speak to someone. The officer who took our statement was polite but skeptical. He wrote everything down, nodding occasionally, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. When we finished, he said he'd look into it, but I could tell he thought we were either lying or had gotten turned around in the woods and let our imaginations run wild. We gave him the approximate location of our campsite and the cabin. He said he'd contact the Forest Service, see if they knew about any structures in that area. We left our contact information and walked out, knowing nothing would come of it. We spent that night in a motel in Tupper Lake. I don't think any of us really slept, but we tried. The next morning we drove back to Albany in near silence. There wasn't much to say. We'd gone into the woods for a hunting trip and come out with an experience that none of us could fully explain or process. Over the next few weeks, I called the police station twice to check on the investigation. Both times, I was told they'd sent a ranger out to the location we'd described, but they couldn't find any cabin, no evidence of recent activity, and no logging road matching our description. The area we'd indicated was apparently largely inaccessible by vehicle. The officer suggested we might have been disoriented and ended up in a different part of the forest than we thought. Marcus started seeing a therapist. He never got his memory back from that night. Those 3 hours when he'd been driving while not there. The therapist suggested he'd experienced a dissociative episode brought on by stress and fear, which maybe made sense, but it didn't explain the cold, the empty expression, the feeling that whatever was driving that truck wasn't entirely Marcus. Joel moved to Vermont about 6 months later. We lost touch. I tried calling him a few times, but he never answered. I heard through a mutual friend that he'd become obsessed with researching unexplained structures and disappearances in the Adirondacks. He'd filled notebooks with information, trying to find some explanation for what we'd experienced. I don't know if he ever found anything. As for me, I tried to move on. I told myself it had been a shared hallucination, stress and fear creating something that wasn't real. I stopped hunting, stopped going into the woods at all really. My wife noticed the change but never pushed me on it. I think she could sense it was something I didn't want to talk about. But then, about 3 years after the incident, this would have been late 2010, I got a phone call. It was Joel. I almost didn't answer, didn't recognise the number, but something made me pick up. "Alex," he said. His voice was different, higher pitched, urgent. "You need to listen to me. I found something." "Joel, where have you been?" "I've been researching, following leads. Alex, that cabin. It's been seen before, multiple times, going back decades. Different locations, but always the same description. No doors, no windows, always in remote areas. And people who camp near it, some of them don't come back." I felt my stomach drop. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we got lucky. Whatever that thing is, whatever lives in it or uses it, we got out. But Marcus," he stopped. "What about Marcus? When's the last time you talked to him?" I hadn't spoken to Marcus in months. We drifted apart after the trip, the shared experience creating a wedge rather than a bond. I don't know why. I tried calling him last week. His number's disconnected. I drove to his apartment in Albany. It's empty. His landlord said he moved out in the middle of the night about 2 months ago. Didn't take most of his stuff, just disappeared. My mouth went dry. Maybe he just needed a fresh start. His parents haven't heard from him either. I called them. They filed a missing persons report. We stayed on the phone for another hour. Joel told me about the research he'd done, the patterns he'd found, stories from the 1940s, the 1970s, the 1990s, all describing a similar structure appearing in forests across the northeast. Sometimes people heard voices from inside, sometimes they saw lights, and sometimes people who encountered it vanished, only to turn up weeks or months later with no memory of where they'd been, if they turned up at all. There was one case, Joel said, from 1983, a group of hikers in Vermont. 3 of them saw the cabin, and one of them, a woman named Sarah something. She claimed she went inside. She was found 4 months later, about 60 miles from where she'd disappeared, wandering on a highway. She couldn't explain where she'd been, just kept saying she'd been inside, and that she'd seen names carved on the walls. Hundreds of them. Did she say anything else? She killed herself 2 weeks after they found her. Her brother said she'd become convinced that she hadn't really left, that she was still inside and everything around her was just a dream. I didn't know what to say to that. The line went quiet for a moment, just the faint hiss of the connection. "I think something followed us out," Joel said finally. "Or maybe something stayed with us. I don't know. But Alex, I keep seeing it. The cabin. In dreams, yeah, but also when I'm awake, I'll be driving and I'll see it at the edge of the road just for a second. Or I'll wake up and feel like I'm inside, like the walls are around me even though I'm in my bed. It's getting worse." "You should talk to someone," I said. "A professional." I did. "They put me on medication, it doesn't help. Because this isn't in my head, Alex, it's real. It's still out there, and I think," he paused, "I think it wants us back." That was the last conversation I had with Joel. He stopped answering his phone after that. I tried to find him, even drove up to Vermont, but the address I had for him was outdated, and no one seemed to know where he'd gone. The police eventually found Joel's car in a parking area near a trailhead in the Green Mountains. It was unlocked, keys on the seat, his wallet and phone inside. There was no sign of Joel himself. The search lasted 3 weeks before they called it off. He was declared a missing person, and that was it. Case unsolved. Marcus was never found either. As far as I know, his case is still open, but no one's actively investigating. He just vanished, and the world moved on. I'm the only one left. The only one of the three of us who's still here, still living something resembling a normal life. But normal is a relative term. I still have nightmares. In them, I'm back in the forest, standing in front of the cabin. The door is open, and I can see inside now. Not clearly, but enough to know that it goes deeper than it should. That the interior is far larger than the exterior could contain. And there are people in there. I can see them moving in the darkness, walking in circles, and when they turn toward me, I see their faces. They're blank, empty, like Marcus's face when he was driving. Sometimes I see Marcus in there, sometimes Joel, and sometimes I see myself. But, I've tried to research it like Joel did, but I couldn't find much. A few scattered mentions in obscure forums, local legends from different states, but nothing concrete. Nothing that explains what the cabin is or where it comes from. The most I found is a reference in a book about Adirondack folklore, a single paragraph mentioning the house with no entrance that appears to travellers who are lost. It said that those who enter never find their way home, and those who refuse to enter are followed by it for the rest of their lives, catching glimpses of it at the edges of their vision until they finally give in and step through the door. I don't know if I believe that. I want to think I escaped, that I got away clean, and the nightmares are just trauma, just my brain trying to process what happened. But there are moments, usually late at night when I'm alone, where I see something at the corner of my vision, a dark shape, rectangular, too solid to be a shadow. And when I turn to look, there's nothing there, just empty space. But I feel it, that pull, like a hook buried in my chest, attached to a line that leads back into those woods, back to the cabin. And the pull gets stronger every year. I'm 39 now. It's been almost 18 years since that trip. I have a wife, a daughter who just started kindergarten, a job I don't love but that pays the bills. I live in Syracuse, hours away from the Adirondacks, and I've built a life that's stable and safe and ordinary. But I know it's waiting, somewhere in the woods, in a place that might not have a fixed location. That cabin exists. The door is open, and inside, carved into the walls among hundreds or thousands of other names, are three. Marcus, Joel, Alex. 2 of those names have been claimed. I don't know when my turn will come. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe 10 years from now. Maybe I'll live out my entire life and die of old age, and this will all have been just a scary story. I tell myself on sleepless nights. But I don't think so. Because 3 weeks ago, my daughter came home from school with a drawing she'd made. She was proud of it, wanted to show me right away. It was a house. She'd drawn it with brown crayon. A simple rectangular structure with a peaked roof. When I asked her what it was, she said, "It's the cabin you dream about, Daddy. The one with no windows." I never told her about the cabin. I never told anyone in my family. But somehow, she knew. And last week, I found something in my jacket pocket. A piece of paper, folded small. When I opened it, I saw writing, shaky, childlike handwriting, the same style as the note we'd found at our campsite all those years ago. It said, "Come back." I don't know how it got there, I don't know who put it in my pocket, but I know what it means. The cabin is waiting, and sooner or later, I'm going to have to answer. I haven't been back to the Adirondacks since 2007, but I think one day soon, I will. Not because I want to, but because I won't be able to stop myself. Because whatever is in that cabin, it's patient. It can wait. It has all the time in the world, and it knows my name.